This week on RSBANDB Update, we review RuneScape, the Gift of Guthix, the first of 3 new RuneScape books. From the rise of Asgarnia and the fall of the Wizard's Tower, we dive into the characters that weave these events together and how they influence the world of the game. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1019, recorded Sunday, December 15th, 2024. Reviewing the Gift of Guthix. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of RSBANDB Update here as we round out the end of the year, really. Start off 2025. We're pre-recording this one in mid-December here. We have a different episode, something we haven't done before. We're doing a book review on RuneScape, the Gift of Guthix, and joining us on this episode is Erin.
Yes, very excited that we're finally doing a book episode.
He joins us usually for our Quest Weeks and has been on a number of Quest Weeks before, and as a resident in the official Discord server for lore and whatnot, so knows his way around a bit of RuneScape history. And also another avid reader amongst the group, Pernasius. You picked up this book, and it surprised you, if I remember correctly, didn't it?
I did, yeah. No, it's a great book. They really did well. I mean, considering the limited space, I mean, obviously, you know, it's not going to be Lord of the Rings type sort of story size telling. It tells a great story in what they had to work with. So I was impressed by it.
Right on. But before we begin, of course, just a big, huge thank you goes out to our experienced tier Patreon members for whom without update would not be possible. This week, that is Amos Reed, Andrew C., Bladecom, Drama Free, Dominic R., Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Hair A., Lemon Lodge, Mr. T., Ricky A., Runestar, The Naked Captain, and Tim. Big, huge thank you to everybody out there. You'll be hearing more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast. But in the meantime, many people are going to be wondering, how do you do a book review on a podcast? And what we're going to do, because this is also RuneScape related, is we're going to kind of treat this like a quest week where we go over a bit of the general story, key plot points, and then look at some of the aspects of how it ties into the lore of the game. So I think this is interesting because, we had that one book many moons ago, and then we got the news this year that there's going to be 2 new ones that are coming out. So we want to see how this goes. Let us know what you guys think about this, and if you guys like this, we'll definitely do one on the other book once everybody has finished reading that, and we have a spot where we can put that on the show. But think of this week as a quest week, as in there will be spoilers for this book. So just fair warning for everybody ahead. But what are your guys' early thoughts with the book and what it does for the general story in terms of the Gift of Guthix? Let's start with you, Erin.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought that when we heard about what it was going to be about, that was a time, it being during like the late 4th Age, early 5th Age, around the rediscovery of runecrafting and the Fremnik Crusades. I thought that was drastically an underserved section of story in the game, like and not just underserved, even ill-defined. I feel like the few pieces of content that touched it probably didn't have a great understanding, so putting a backbone to that felt like a good time. And then once you hit the book, it's not just plot, it's got a lot of good characters going on that keep you reading.
Yeah. And I remember when I read where this book was going to land, I said, were in the 6th Age. We had a good portion of the 5th Age in the game. That's what old school is. We've seen a lot of the 3rd Age, and we've seen a bit of the 2nd Age, and we've seen bits in certain quests about the 1st Age, but the 4th Age is really kind of a gray area for that in terms of what we know.
It's like what happens after the 3rd Age, where everything's been destroyed, and there's this big period of getting us towards the 5th Age, where like the age of the humans, where they actually have their cities and whatnot. This is like kind of like it's not entirely in the 4th Age, but it definitely shows us, at least in the first part and a bit in the second part, what that looked like of them trying to redevelop after the thousands of years of war in the God Wars.
How about you, Pernicious?
Yep, same. As I said earlier, I said, really impressed by it. I mean, I've always loved the sort of the Fremennik area and that barbarian type thing, and sort of touching on that, giving us filling out that a little bit more, why the invasion come about, and developing some of the characters up there, but also the original Wizard's Tower and what happened and how it formed and how the parties come together. The 4 different disciplines. It did a great job telling that. And, like we all knew originally, Felidor, there were black and white knights there. Why they were there, how they were there, what happened between them, why there was the falling out. It covered everything really well. And, as I said, it's probably a book that deserved either 2 parts or, an 800-plus page edition. But
320 pages, this one.
Is what it got, yeah. And that's generally the average these days, is 300 to 400 pages is what an author's allowed to sort of use for costs and such. So with what Erin Evans got here, and it was funny, that's the other thing, it was an American author. I honestly thought it was a British author that would have been working close, going in, speaking to the mods at Jagex and such. And in this day and age, obviously, with Discords and all those things where you can just sort of have FaceTime with people, it's a lot easier. But she stuck true to the general lore, the characters. She fleshed out that period really, really well.
And if I remember correctly, when she was writing this, no prior experience with the RuneScape universe, and I think she had full access to the lore council for the book too. So,
she'd have to have with how they got the law done. She would have had to have, the law council would have to have been there advising her and telling her what bits and pieces were and where things fit in. Because, as I said, she stuck to it very well.
So, if you guys were to give a bit of a brief overview, for somebody who's just listening to the show here and hasn't gone through the book, hasn't read it, what is the main general plot arc of the book? What is it set out to accomplish?
The book is trying to tell probably primarily the story of the Fremen and how they destroyed rune crafting from the humans, but in order to preface and go across that, we start with the rediscovery of rune crafting, which led to the 5th Age, and end up with the fate of the Wizard's Tower, which, if you've played Rune Memories, you might know a little bit about. So I primarily, I think that they're looking at like the character relationships between the Fremennik and the Asgarnians and how that played out. And then how that shaped a lot of that early 5th Age history, and how that changed the world into what we start playing as a noob.
Yeah, and that's interesting because we don't really, you can't really get that much of that when you look at the starting area where the Wizard's Tower is, Falidor and whatnot, and south of there. You don't get much time to the Fremenniks.
That's it. We didn't realize, the destruction of the Wizard's Tower. I mean, we know sort of there was the Wizards coming together trying to work out spells and things and that, but we didn't know why they were doing things like that. And the book covers that with, the discovery of the rune essence mine in the Fremennik area, and the Asgarnians wanting access to it, but they go in there pretending that they're from Lunar Isles.
Of course.
The people of the Lunar Isles are basically cousins of the Fremennik who handle the magic side, and the Fremennik themselves, it's all about fighting magic, sort of a taboo type thing. So, yep, you go take that, you pay us a tribute, you can come and just take what you want of the stuff, but just, keep it out of our hands type thing. And we're introduced to another Guardian of Guthix here, which was Zora, or Zoya, however you want to say it. It was a giant frog that was guarding the rune essence mine, and she realized that the people, the Asgarnians coming in, were being deceptive, but sort of they wanted man to be able to discover magic and raise themselves up again. So she sort of let it go, and that sort of deception is it's a huge part of the plot on why the invasion happened. With Ilm, who is the main character. She wanted to tell the truth, but was forbidden by sort of the king and her master wizard from revealing it. So and then when Gunnar, who eventually becomes the Jarl, or the sort of the head of his clan, sort of finds out, he feels very betrayed, and just sort of continues on. And his whole thing is, after that he just wants to destroy magic altogether. And that is basically the essence of the book, is that sort of discovering the runes, bringing magic back, and then the barbarians coming down to destroy it and try and take it away again.
And I think one of the things, if we were to kind of just tie this into the in-game lore, I think it was either meeting history or making history. We see, I think that was in the first age, right, Avernick? Those two, the flashbacks we got there, where humans are first just kind of experimenting with runes, and many people might not, realize that the human kingdoms lost access to their magic after the third age. And I don't think we give enough credit to the upheaval that the third age was with this. And is there a good amount of exposition about that in the book as to why they're bringing that back?
Especially in the first part, they have someone keeping inventory of their runes, and it's like, we have 1 fire rune and 2 air runes, and that's what they have to work with for their whole adventuring party. So they are very without. And then I think throughout the book, because the wizards are working for King Radalin, who is the person who eventually founds the Asgarnian Empire, they very much benefit off of suddenly having an amazing surplus of runes, and they can what once was just Misthalin is the sole power in the area. Suddenly someone else is able to compete because they have access to this magic that previously single digits was expected.
That become their sort of their primary export, basically. They did their trades and treaties and everything based on runes.
Hence the name RuneScape, dare I say. Anyways, when we speak about plot points here, the two of you have divide this up into basically 3 parts of the book.
The book does as well.
Okay,
yes.
The book does too. Yes. So we'll start with part 1. Asgarnia becomes a kingdom rising from groups of individual tribes. So this is obviously fairly early on in the book, and I'd imagine, again, part of the rising up out of the third age.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically, this is where Radlin is just starting out. He's conquered a lot of the tribes, bringing them into sort of his banner. He's sort of got an alliance between the Black and White Knights, who are both fighting for him. But there are still obviously a lot of other strong tribes out there, and that's where our main character Ilm comes in. She's actually the niece of one of his rival tribes. She was sent there as a spy, but eventually she sort of works out that, hey, what he is doing is actually good for humans overall, and good for sort of Asgarnia, and eventually turns her back on her own. She is an orphan. We will start off with that. Was taken in by her aunt. So her mother and father had both died when she was a lot younger. But yeah, sent there sort of as a spy, but sort of does turn and become one of Radlin's most loyal followers.
So with that, when you look at this, you mentioned that there's a greater purpose as to why they're doing this, why they're effectively building this up. Is that something that just happened organically, or was it something that was intended by the people around at that time? And I guess the other question with this is that how far out are we from the end of the Third Age? Does it ever say?
We are years from the Fifth Age at this point.
Okay, so just years from the Fifth Age. Got it.
The book does, at the beginning of every chapter, define what year and day it's happening by the reign of Lord Radlin, which is not exactly like this is what you'd probably associate for if you were in this time, but it's not like saying like, oh yeah, we definitely moved into the Fifth Age at this time. Like that's probably a retrospective thing.
Yeah, and if I am remembering my history correctly, the start of the Fifth Age is basically hallmarked with that human return to magic, right?
Yes, when they rediscover rune crafting. So the entire first part of this book is defined as the reign of Lord Radlin over the tribes, and by the time you get to part 2, when they've rediscovered rune crafting, it's his reign of Asgarnia, and that's when they have like the power of the runes. So they're very much defining this by their ruler at the time, which is pretty
Lord Radlin. Yeah. So basically, the opening
it's what they would do.
Yeah, the opening chapter is the 7th year of the reign of Lord Radlin of the Donblast tribe, because it wasn't Asgarnia. That's when he was starting to conquer. Okay. So he'd been in charge of his tribe for 7 years and was bringing everyone together and building them up and conquering other tribes. And then as we go down, it says, as Avanek said, it's the reign of King Radlin of Asgarnia as we get into the second.
And that would be the Fifth Age, yeah, because
yes,
yeah. So far from the third. I don't know if we have an exact date for how long the Fourth Age lasted, but this would be the wrap up of when they're like, okay, it's tribes. We're uniting at this point.
All right, fair enough. And I just think it's necessary and interesting to give that bit of preface to kind of say here's where we are in relation to when RuneScape started, because the bulk of the game we have took place in year 169 of the Fifth Age, so 169 years, and then a little bit before this is exactly where we're at for people who are wanting a chronological footprint on that. And in relation to Asgarnia becoming a kingdom on this, we mentioned, of course, that there was the idea that this was something that was in effect stirred. And I guess, and it's probably clear at this point that I did not read the book. The two of you have, so I'm kind of asking the leading questions throughout this, is that when it comes to Asgarnia becoming a kingdom, if the book is to delve into that, how did it do that?
I think that this first part is definitely would be the tumultuous part, where it was there are still tribes that think that they can compete with Radlin's Donblast tribe, So Ilm being sent as a spy, I think was probably their biggest competition was the from her. It's, I think, kind of set as almost a stalemate. Like it could be anyone's game at this point, but because Radolin had the council of his couple of wizards that recognize that opportunity with the rune essence mine in the Fremnik region, they're able to grasp on that.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Through
also
that become superior.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that the discovery of the mine and their access to it is really what swung the power to Radolin. That cemented. I mean, yes, he was probably the strongest tribal chief
And
there.
charismatic.
Yeah, but he had, he'd sort of aligned the white knights and black knights to his cause.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that the discovery and rebuilding of the altars was what cemented that for him.
And what altars in particular are we talking about? Are we talking about just air and mind, or are we talking about other subsequent ones nearby too?
Yeah,
they're not so specific at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, at the beginning it was more. Yeah, it was sort of the ones that were sort of in Asgarnia.
Mm-hmm.
So, your mind rune up near the goblins and things.
I think
like
they did use the old location for the air altar as well.
Yes, the air altar.
One.
So
it was
it was sort of it was more discovering where they are, how to repower them up and go that way. And this was really the period of discovery and working out and how do we do it and such.
It's interesting because we always say that it would have been so neat to see something in game that was discovery based, whether it be a skill, which archaeology got us close, or quests along the way for new areas, or just things that are utterly groundbreaking. And we did that to a degree with the desert and Azanadra's temple and whatnot there. But I feel like this is an entirely different level as you're going through the book. How did that feel for people who knew, obviously what was to come in the future?
I feel like the characters, at least the ones that we have the point of view for, were probably just as blind as we were. I feel like they had like at this point, and this is probably pretty key for the book, is that we're dealing with quite young characters in part one because there's such big time jumps. They're very new to everything going on, and they have good mentors at this point. They're not quite there as to being all-knowing and whatnot. So it is, everything is framed as almost like unknowing. Like there's like ill-defined like woods and areas and big like spiders attacking and a lot of chaos where they're kind of going along with what their mentors are telling them to do. It is probably for the benefit of the book that we're getting to know the characters that we're knowing at this point, the young ones, because it goes on for so many decades. But I wouldn't say that they're like the key drivers of what we're seeing, and we don't get much of the point of view of the different like wizards like Endel and whatnot who are
okay. So it's more of an event-driven kind of book rather than the
at this point for sure. Like they're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
All right, and I guess when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, I remember from my perspective when RS2 came out and Rune Essence and the ability to do rune crafting technical on that. How big of a deal does the book make out of that in particular, the Rune Essence and rebuilding?
They're in
that's all huge. Yeah,
they're in battle for the first rune altar. They're fighting for their life for it. They are the first one is definitely the big event. I feel like because after the first one, the book breaks into a time jump and whatnot. We really the first altar they find, and after that, sounds like it's all gravy from there.
Okay.
Yeah, that first altar is working out how are they going to power it up, how it all works. As Evan said, that big battle scene that happened there to try and stop them, and it was that was a huge moment.
And this is really only the first part of the book and one aspect of it, and you can kind of already see how this is shaping up to be, I guess, what feels like a walk through RuneScape history that we had never had before on that. With that, at least from my perspective, and as we progress through this, I am learning more and more, and it's making the case, at least to me, and we'll see what the listeners say about picking this up and reading it. So, what else do we have in part one? Unless you guys want to talk anything about Rune Essence and the altars anymore.
I think a big part that is definitely key, but maybe not central in the first part, is the involvement of the Black Knights or the Kintra.
Okay.
Because it is they are so integrated at this point in Lynn's retinue. Like you think RuneScape nowadays, and it's White Knights versus Black Knights.
Yeah, and far away.
It definitely seems like at this point, at this point, it's Black Knights are kind of overshadowing the White Knights as far as superiority in the army.
And that's not the sense we get in the modern game, is it?
Their leader was actually
they are very central to this reestablishing of Asgarnia. They're thriving in war times against the other tribes.
Their leader was probably Black Knight
Lady Valzin
leader. That's the one. She was actually a daughter of the king of Varrock at the time, I believe it was. But yeah, she was his most trusted advisor. That was the one he really stood by and trusted the most. She was pretty much second in command. You could say.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that was
the Kintra involvement is huge.
Another thing that I did really enjoy in that first part was the introduction of Rue.
Yes,
I mean it's such a little thing, but they've tied the pet the rune crafting pet Rue. They've tied him into the book and done it organically very well, and just the way it was done, it was.
How exactly does that work?
I really loved the way they did that.
The main character was doing rune crafting and gained their attention and got a skilling pet.
when Ilm was when they were at the first altar that they were trying to repair, this little creature just come and sort of was all over her type thing and followed her back, and it loves runes and just likes to play with runes and curl up in the runes and things. So, but it was it was really well done, and just to tie it in so organically. It was a nice little added extra that you get in books that you don't always get in movies, or like when they do quests and thought you can't do those little incidental things, and that's why I love a book, because you can just do so much more, and it was,
and it's exposing the universe for what it is.
In a book that's very political and grounded, I think that Rue added a nice little whimsical element.
And helps out with a few little things. In
this in the future.
Oh, that's so neat. You wonder in terms of how somebody who has never, done the RuneScape universe before, here, the author, how does she go about and see that, we have these skilling pets in game that are ultra rare, and yet find a plot point.
I can't speak to the research, but it definitely happened.
Yeah, that would have to have come from one of the law council members. Would have said, "Hey, is there any way we can do this?" And the author thought, "Well, yeah. Hey, you get it from rune crafting. Hey, what about when they first do it? Let's include it there." That, I mean, yeah, there's no way that anyone who doesn't know the game would think of something like that. So that I think would have to credit to one of the law council members.
And the reason why that makes me feel so good is because it is the worst when you have somebody who comes into an already established universe and either gets it wrong or tries to do things right, but are slightly off, right? Whereas, would you say, and this is more of a meta book level thing than just this one part, is there anything that's wrong lore wise that we know of, or is everything on track?
I don't think there was other. I mean, as I said, we got introduced to a new Guardian, but even that tied in well because we know that Guthix had a bunch of different Guardians. And, we're probably not going to know about one that died in the Fourth Age. I think...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, just even introducing characters like that still tied in well and didn't sort of try and twist the story to their way of thinking rather than the game's way of thinking.
Mm.
And
I
that's
think
good.
They picked up on a lot of key bits and use them appropriately, and anything introduced new was either tied off with a bow, like the Guardian of Guthix, or is probably intentional, and maybe we can see the repercussions for in the game. Like nothing seems like it's trying to overexert on what we currently have.
Yeah. Anything else on the coalition between White and Black Knights before we move on?
Not at this point.
Okay.
At this point, the Black Knights are super cool.
Yeah,
and the White Knights kind of suck.
A dick, yeah, they're just dicks. But I mean, that's Sarah Diamond's a dick, so why wouldn't his followers be? But no, you really you sort of get a much better understanding of the Kinshra and eventually why they sort of are the way they are now. But at this point, they're just two factions of knights that work for the king, and there's of course each one wants to raise their own group above the other, but it wasn't as contentious as it gets later on.
All right. Well, we'll move on to part 2, but before that, just a bit of a break that if you want to support the podcast on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/RSBANDB, and big, huge thank you to Patreon supporters this week. Apologies if you subscribed over the Christmas break. These names are going to be the names as of present of December 16th. So big thank you goes out to Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Andrew C, Arvid L, Bladecom, Chilbura, Dominic R, Drama Free, Duramax, Guy Lafleur, Hare, Iskatu, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jesse W, Keski, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Mongrath, Mr. T, Pernasius, Ricky A, Robbie D, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Targagin, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. Big, huge thank you, everybody. If you want to learn more about what all this is about, head on over to patreon.com/RSBANB. The clip show just came out last week. Fingers crossed if everything goes well with our Christmas operation, as we call it here at RSBANB. You can sign up and start getting clips for the first clip show and clips of 2025. But we do have 3 tiers before I start diving into the clip show tier. I know that's everybody's favorite. But for $1 a month, that's the base price. You get access to an entire back catalog of monthly bits, or bonus shows, as we call them. Those are our shows where we talk about one topic in particular, kind of like this episode now that I think about it, but nonetheless, focusing on specific topics. The one that is to come out very soon in January for Patreon members is what makes PVM fun? We had a couple of PVM people on the show, and we just talked about a number of aspects across various bosses in RuneScape that make PVM fun for us, and kind of to just paint a picture of what that's like for people who don't do PVM, because I know there's often a time where people might say that, I'm getting my ass handed to me by this boss or what have you, and I just can't learn it. What exactly makes it fun doing this on repeat for hours a day? What was that?
Safe spots make it fun.
Oh yeah, safe spots. Yeah, that's one. And all sorts of movement and mechanics and other things and little rewards, both tangible and non-tangible. But if you want to hear more about that, patreon.com/RSBANDB. We also do have the VIP tier where for $3 a month, you'll get access to a Discord channel as well as a Discord rank, plus high-quality stereo versions of the show each and every week. And, of course, we also do have the $5 a month VIP tier where you get access to the clips that we use to make the clip show, the one I was teasing about. And hopefully for 2025, we will have a Patreon Christmas card this year. But we're still aiming to do something for the $5 tiers once the postal system in Canada sorts itself out. But nonetheless, big, huge thank you to everybody out there. Patreon.com/RSBANDB. So what does part 2 of the book look like?
It starts with peace.
Okay, peace. That's always good. And
really, it starts with King Radalin had at this point become king of Asgarnia. He had successfully conquered the tribes in the region.
And how much of a time gap are we looking at between part 1 and 2? Does it explicitly say?
40 to 50 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fair amount of time.
It starts with the 42nd year of his reign of Asgarnia.
Okay, so that's how we can tell. Neat.
So something after that would plus whatever happened at the end of the first chapter where they rediscovered runecrafting.
All right.
It starts with Asgarnia's nation, and they still have their relationship with the Fremnik province, specifically Relica, using the rune essence mine near them. When that is set astray because the lunar mages reveal that the Asgarnians aren't lunar mages and that they've been tricking them to use the rune essence mine. This then spirals into, at this point, betrayal, because the Gunner, who I believe at this point is the Jarl of Relica.
Not yet. No, he's not the.
No, not yet.
The Jarl
No. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, basically, he's still the son. The other two sons, I think the other two sons were dead. His older two brothers. So he was actually
in line.
He's next in line. But yeah, basically he brings it to his dad. They were lying, and because he was so close to Ilm, Ilm is basically his daughter's godmother, in however they do it over there. But he feels ultra betrayed. But his dad's like, well, as long as they keep paying, I don't give a damn.
Yes, and that drives Gunnar to feel super rage, eventually drawing Ilm back to the Fremnik province to figure this out, where the Guardian Guthix is killed.
Oh no, that can't go over well.
Due to some errant demon being summoned in the vicinity. That is probably the breaking point to trigger the war.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, they each blame each other. Gunnar, basically being a big baby, just can't get over the fact that, that she's trying to explain, I wanted to tell you, but, I was forbidden. He's like, yeah, but we were friends, your godmother to my daughter. And she's gone, I understand, but, I want to explain. He doesn't want to listen. They get into a big fight. He's trying to attack her. She's trying to protect herself with magic without hurting him. And then all of a sudden this demon appears, and the Guardian steps in and is trying to protect them both, and over the course of that gets killed. Both blame each other because the Fremennik, while they were sort of Guthix worshippers, had a lot of totems and such that were very demon-like. So, Ilm obviously thinks Gunnar has somehow summoned it. Gunnar thinks, being a magician, she's summoned it, and we find out later on who really did summon it, and that was a pretty obvious plot point. I mean, I picked that straight away.
You picked the exact right person?
Yeah. I knew straight away it was what's her name. I thought just the way she was all the way through. The head of the Kinshra was... I mean, she was brilliant, but she was very political, very motivated to pushing things the way she wanted to do it. And I think she wanted total access. She wanted things to come to a head. So she's the one who summoned it, and it ended up killing the Guardian, which created such a wide chasm that there was no way that Gunnar was ever going to be sane again, and because basically he was, since he was a child, he was sort of with he'd been going to visit Zora, and she was always there talking and sort of filled in that parental role that his own father didn't really give him. So, he just felt totally betrayed and such from that.
That's interesting when you mention it in that way, because you know what I was getting flashbacks to with that, and obviously it's not the same scale as this. It was the build up in the World Wakes, as we were getting closer and closer, of course, to where Guthix was napping, of course, before everything happened there. Now, obviously not as cataclysmic when Zoria gets killed here, right? But
not. I feel like
not as,
even though this is a very personal squabble.
Sure.
What then leads on in the rest of the middle third of the book is the destruction of every rune crafting altar. So what had previously been a big step ahead for man in the world, totally ripped away. They attack everything from the death altar to the law altar to the soul altar across the world. So it's not that, but it's pretty world defining. Like, it is a worldwide war, like attack on.
And Ilm obviously feels responsible because her and Gunnar being so close, she had told him all about. I mean, she basically told him everything except that they were
where to strike
Asgarnians.
And how to hurt us.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were best friends type thing, and she's we're building this. This is what we're doing. We're bringing this altar back up. We're doing this. So
that's another bit of the same sort of vein about how our characters are always the ones who get played. This character got played.
Well, I don't know. She wasn't played. I mean, they were friends.
They were true friends, and that makes it harder. That makes it so much harder.
Okay, fair.
And that's it.
And that's good storytelling too, then.
It was. And then, I mean, you can understand, the betrayal. I mean, when he honestly thinks that Ilma's the one who killed Zoya, he's like, that's it. I'm going to wipe out everything that you've created by these runes. And he knew exactly where every altar was, because obviously there'd been discussions, and he just went on a rampage and took over all the other clans at the time, and got a big army and just invaded, and they do a hit and run. So like every time they they sort of run to one area to protect it, he was already on the move to the next one. In a
different one. Just glancing back at the notes here, mentions the building of the first Wizard's Tower and then subsequent destruction. Now, obviously, the destruction is in the phase we're talking about here. How big of a deal was the building of the Wizard's Tower, the first Wizard's Tower here?
I think in this part, it's built.
Okay.
Like it just exists.
It was it was raised by rune magic, basically.
It was raised by rune magic. like the Imkando dwarves and whatnot, like associating with them. It's at this point kind of a background location, but also a backbone for the Asgarnian Empire and all their trade relations and whatnot. It's not till the end of the part where this becomes kind of the final showdown for the raids. This is the Wizard's Tower ends up being their big goal.
Yep, that's their final one.
Which makes sense when you talk about
all their rune essence there.
When you talk about the the rising up of the humans with the magic at that point. So,
okay. And at this point, I was kind of checking, maybe not like whatnot for like if this was accurate, but I was like, are we retconning how the tower burned down? Because Gunner's plan at this point is to burn down the tower, which we all know happens. Maybe explicitly in RuneScape 3, less explicitly in old school RuneScape. He does not succeed, but it's kind of a close call.
Basically, we go from the he's invading. The burning of the tower and such is sort of towards the end, but we're sort of getting a lot more, a bit more story about the Kinshra, and we're starting to see those tensions between White Knights, Black Knights. While she's the most trusted advisor, there's a big rise in Saradomin followers, and the majority of the council is made up of Saradomians.
And they start taking a lot more credit.
Exactly, and I keep forgetting her name. It's not Sansa. The head of Kinshra.
Velzen.
Velzen. Yeah.
Velzen.
That's Tanison. That's why I was getting Sansa. I was getting them confused. But anyway, she's starting to get a nose put out of joint, and especially there comes a part where there was a big ceremony, and it was all White Knights this, White Knights that. Here's a sword for you to the Kinshra, and I think that was where her next move and motives on what she was going to do moves on from there.
I don't know if you guys know this, but the sword that she was presented here was the one that we dig up in the Falador battle event from 2017.
Oh, was it
Falador battle event?
There was the battle, like the battle with the Kinshra.
Oh, like the White Knight.
When they updated Falador,
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
that was the same sword. So they're kind of tying it there.
That's an Easter egg I didn't see. That was good.
Yeah, she left the sword.
That's remarkably detailed.
That is, because I didn't even pick up on that one. That's
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I mean, it really sticks to the aspects of the game. There's nothing that's sort of, where did that come from type thing. Everything that's in there is in game, and it's and this is where we see this is he starts his big invasions. They come down, they set up encampments, and that's where we get Gunner's Ground and such. That's sort of all touched on in here.
Do they provide any insight in the way they came? Like, did they come over?
Yep.
Did they come over the troll through Berthorpe, or did they come?
No, they
over the
come through ships and overland.
Okay.
They landed their ships. They first attacked Ardoin. Basically, burnt Ardoin to the ground, and that's where.
They collapsed the tunnels in on the Death Altar. That's why that one's not destroyed.
Yes. Yeah, they were trying to protect the Death Altar, and all that happened. And we had they basically burnt Ardoin to the ground. That's where Master Endel, which was Ilm's teacher, he dies there protecting the other wizards. And that's basically the point where Ilm just realizes there's that's the point of no return for her on Gunner, where she knows he has to go. She was sort of always in that thing, I can get through to him. But at that point, once Endel died, that was her turning point where she realizes, nah, he's just a madman. He's not the person I knew. He's sort of starting to kill off anyone of his own people that defied him or spoke out against him or questioned him, to the point where he even banishes his own daughter.
Interesting. And you mentioned Ardoin being burnt to the ground in that way. How devastating is it for Asgarnia, newly risen Asgarnia, let's say?
The final battle, when the Wizard's Tower is under siege for possible destruction, is at the same time Falador is also under siege. So I feel like that's like the final holdout for this Fremnik invasion. Eventually the Kinshra do pull through and defend the city, but at not at the expense of, say, during that battle, the Imkando destroy Camdazal so the Fremnik can't take it. So
right. Okay.
We get like a big explanation for why Camdazal is destroyed, and it's because they destroyed it themselves at this point.
Which is interesting, because when you think about it, it's an area that we never really got to experience that much on RS3, and they said they might bring it in at some point. Avernick, I don't know if you've got there on Old School yet, but have you been there?
I've seen it a bit, yeah. Like, I've seen the top level part. I know of the Desert Treasure 2 part.
I haven't been to the Desert Treasure 2 part, obviously. I haven't done that quest yet, but yeah. Okay. And it again, just as you're saying, we're weaving so much through things that we know, things that we don't know, and it feels like we're on a good adventure here through this book that fits in the RuneScape universe.
This is the part where I lied when I said it was about the Fremnik invasion, because there's another part. And that's, I think, at the point in this book, I feel like you feel like it's about the Fremnik invasion, but when you have 100 pages more to go, and that's over, you start questioning what's the bigger story.
Oh,
and that's because there's been subterfuge the whole time.
Again, going into RuneScape's greatest quests and some of the great things they've done. So what exactly are we looking at here?
Part 3, called The Tower, is primarily about the period of time in the Wizard's Tower that Rune Memories looks back on. So all those memory bits. When they're trying to figure out teleportation. Also with Asgarnia finally dealing with being in a not war state.
Right, because we know that can be difficult.
When the Kinshra and the White Knights are trying to settle out what's going on.
So what's the subterfuge then?
That the Kinshra have been playing everyone the whole time.
And then we slowly but surely kind of get back to where they are now.
Again, I don't know if it's the whole time. I think it's more she was playing her own game, but I don't think it was she was to the point that after that sort of rise of the Saradominists and her sword, the way she was just, here's a sword type thing, be happy. I think that was the point where she's gone, right, that's it.
Interesting.
And she's really started the planning on what her next step is going to be.
So we have two different perceptions here from the both of you then, is what I'm gathering.
Right. Because we have... So we're talking about, for to say who she is, Lady Valzin, the head of the Kinshra. At the beginning of this chapter, or this part, Ilm, our main character, realizes that Valzin was responsible for summoning the demon during the fight in the Rune Essence Mine that got the Guardian of Guthix killed. So so for most of this part, Ilm is trying to figure out what to do with that information and figure out how to expose her.
Was this sorry, just
Mhm.
had Radeline already known that she was a spy to begin with, but had come over to his side at this
Ilm?
point, or was that
I believe that Ilm confessed that in part 1, at the end of part 1, that she
end
was
of
a spy.
part one? Okay,
That
I
was
knew
her,
she
her
confessed.
play.
I just couldn't remember where
Yeah.
she confessed.
And while she was a spy, Valzin did know she was a spy,
Oh yeah, she knew all along. Yeah,
and was also playing her at that point. But in part 3 here, we're learning that Valzin was the one that got the Guardian Guthix killed, was also the one that told the Lunar Tribe to go poke the Fremnik and tell him that the Asgarnians weren't them.
Yeah.
So we learned that after Radeline had united the tribes and the wars were kind of dying down, that the Kindra wanted a new war. And that's why
Progression through chaos.
Yes, and that's why they spurned Gunnar into starting the Fremnik Crusades. To gain themselves relevancy. Even after all of that, they still weren't recognized as much as they hoped, because the Ceremonists were taking credit.
Right.
Yep.
So we have, on, I believe this third part, there's kind of like 2 stories going on. One is we're just seeing Rune Memories. Not like in a bad way, but like we're seeing those scenes from Rune Memories where we're seeing the apprentices slowly discover the teleportation problem and how to solve it by going through the abyss.
And that was an interesting bit too. The way they
for
did
sure.
that.
And there's really good like character relationships between like the older wizards who at this point have lived so long and have been around each other for a bunch, have relationships. Like there's some cool stuff going on there that adds a lot of depth to that quest. And on the other side, we have Ilm trying to figure out what she's supposed to do with this information that the Kindra have been playing her king this whole time. Eventually, we do get to the Wizard's Tower burning down because of all of the what I think is in the quest Rune Memories framed as like a betrayal of the Red Order trying to use demons and whatnot. But in the book, it's definitely framed more as like a misunderstanding.
Yes.
Where the Red Order is not anywhere near as malicious, and they're all kind of trying to like. It's almost like the Blue Order, the Ceremonists, are the ones that are like unreasonable, and everyone else is trying to like play along.
Which is interesting when you think about it, because there always used to be in the early RS days a lot of black and white when setting up factions, no matter what it might be. And, you know, as with everything in life, you do get a certain degree of nuance here. So that's good that's in the book.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Saradomas, I mean, they've always had that mightier-than-thou type feeling. And it plays across in here as well. You know, they've, you know, again, the author has played on those factions very well. She's got those things down pat.
Oh yeah, and the Saradomas do not come across well, including Parian, who ends up being one of the surviving Saradomanists, who ends up running the tower. Is like, oh, he's still mightier than that, even though he lived through this whole tragedy. Like, he sets it up to keep that line running. But on the Ilm and Valzin side with the Kindra plot, we eventually culminate in a attempt on King Radlin's life, which is thwarted, which ends up in the Kindra getting finally exposed and exiled, getting us to where we are modern day. That ends up being. Oh, go ahead.
We did miss one, the big plot point where Radlin was looking for his successor because he was getting older.
Yes. Sorry.
Everyone thought that Velzen was running herself up to be that, and then she turns around and says, "No, I think Ilm should be it," and they named Ilm as Radlin's successor. And that threw everyone off because everyone was expecting Velzen to do it. To be the one to put herself forward. He's going, no, I don't want it. I think it should be Ilm. And that was a big plot point.
Yes, trying to throw them off guard, make them in this assassination attempt. Valzin is trying to set up the Saradomanists to be the likely culprit with evidence and whatnot. It's only because of Ilm's insight from earlier in the part that she's able to set up a double cross and expose the assassination attempt as it's happening.
So would you say that, you can have different levels of intrigue when you're dealing with a book or something to that effect? What would you put this at in terms of how deep does it go and how rewarding is it at the end to the reader?
I think because I think like the second part is really built up as its own story. It's if you took just the second part on its own, it's short,
like that's the sense I'm getting from this. And by the way, what are we looking at time difference between parts 2 and 3? If either you know offhand.
2 is the longest. 3 is a little shorter. 1 was the shortest.
Okay.
I think the book is setting itself up as the second part, like the Fremnik Crusade is the thing.
Right.
But the through line through the whole book is that second layer. So I'd say 1 layer deep is probably as far as it goes. But it's quite satisfying seeing Valzin get her comeuppance and all the reveals come into place. Because you know that the Kinshra don't end up as a part of the Asgarnia ruling factions.
Yeah. So you got to get to that point.
That's really where this book is going. So when I said that this book was about the Fremnik invasions in the beginning, it's not. It's really about how the Kinshra screw themselves out of being in the Asgarnia.
which I think is probably the more interesting story.
Really. Absolutely. I think that the Fremnik invasions are interesting in that they happened, but I don't think there's enough intrigue there to like keep the whole plot going. It's good for plot and things happening,
and now we see why
it helps move the story forward.
Oh yes,
and now we see
the
why
underlying intrigue that sort of keeps you going,
pulls you through,
right? Yeah. And now we see Pronasius. Well, you said that each part could be its own 200 to 300 page book
easily. So
if you really wanted to go deep in on those in terms of what was available. I think
the Fremnik side of things, I think it felt a little light because Gunnar feels betrayed. He goes back, he fights with his dad. His dad takes a swing at him. He punches him back. His dad hits the table and dies. So he basically kills his own father to become the Jarl. But puts it as, well, it was the will of Guthix because he hit the Guthix altar in our camp and that killed him, not me punching him and knocking him onto it. So, Gunnar doesn't like to take responsibility for anything.
He does blame everyone else for everything.
It's everyone else's fault and he's just got to fix it. Even to the point, his own son-in-law sort of says, hang on, our people are suffering. We need to go back. So he has the son. He kills his son-in-law. His own daughter is starting to say the same things. He banishes her. It's everyone else's fault. People want to. He's very unstable. Everyone wants to go back home, but he's just so determined that he's going to tear down the Wizard's Tower and stop everything. He'd basically kill every Fremnik around to get his will done. So I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that and that sort of decay into that madness, and sort of show a bit more of him getting the people together and why he became so callous, because he was a pretty good kid, really.
Right.
But again, as I said, in 300 or 400 pages, you can't go that much in depth.
You can't go.
So you've sort of got to infer a lot of that yourself. As Avanik said it best before we started the show, this is an epic style sci-fi fantasy book that's done in the size of a standard book. And even though it is done like that, as I said, she's still done very well.
And I think the reason
you're not losing anything.
Yeah, and if I may, I think the reason they did that is because you remember the RuneScape books from years ago. I feel like those didn't necessarily go over as well as they should have with the community then, and this was the first foray back into RuneScape fiction in the modern
I
RS
never
era.
actually read those. I thought they were more fan fiction than proper lore-based books from what I heard.
They have a cult fandom, but I wouldn't say that they're like mainstays. Like, and there are a lot of references to them in game. For especially in the Mareki stuff, because
Jared's Cape.
Yes, they were a lot in the Mauritania region.
Yeah.
But I don't think they reached like main popular success. And I don't know if any books will. I hope so, but
if any books will, these will. But yeah.
I think that the Gift of Guthix is a pretty darn good fantasy book. Like, regardless, I think you do get a lot more out of it if you know the RuneScape world. But I think that there's really strong characters in Ilm, Gunnar, a couple of the other wizards. Like those relationships really carry it through. It doesn't have to be really based on the setting.
Right. And, with that, I have a couple of other, meta questions, I guess, about this.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in part 3 that you guys want to mention plot-wise, story-wise to talk about?
Just how true it stayed to the Rune Memories quest.
Okay.
I mean, basically, it's word for word. I mean,
you can follow it along, with the wiki transcript.
Exactly.
I did.
I finished this just before Group Iron Man started, and obviously Rune Memories is one of the early quests you do, and I'm sitting there going, wow. And it just gave me such a deep appreciation for that quest. I mean, I always enjoyed the quest, but it became a great quest once you've read that and you sort of realize everything.
It's so
you
integral,
sort of see you sort of see how the Wizard's Tower exploded, what happened, why the demon was there, why. I mean, and really the reason wasn't because of the Red Mages having that demon as we thought. It was because the Blue Wizards walked away. They broke the chain that was supposed to keep everything there. And that sort of, it was actually the Red Wizards acolyte who discovered how to do the teleportation spell, but it was the Green Wizard who'd been working on it for like a century. He just couldn't work it, and then she's realized that he solved that problem she couldn't do and claimed it as her own, and all that tension, why everyone was suspicious of everyone. They really got into that and did it super well.
All right.
A great retelling.
And I guess with that, just piggybacking off of all of this discussion, for this, when we look at everything that has been told here and how it's interacted with the RS lore base, let's just say, 2 questions on that. Would you consider this book canon? Or I guess maybe even better question is, does Jagex consider this book canon?
I'd say yes.
I think absolutely yes. I would be surprised if we saw stuff that contradict this, given the amount of attention put in, not just by the author, but also by the JMOs and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. How difficult do you think it would be for somebody who is not a RuneScape player to get into this? Now that's the real question. Avernick, you read fantasy, so
I think that it takes a couple of leaps. I think that particularly the structure where, like Pernasian said, it covers a lot of time. And so every chapter is, while the parts are big time skips, every chapter is a bit of a time skip, whether it's by days, weeks, or months. They don't stick to a consecutive chapter does not take place at the same time as the previous one. So like it's really jumping through those eras, and I think that makes it a little harder to recommend to someone that's not familiar with the setting.
Well, I mean, I think someone who picks it up and reads it would enjoy it.
I think you can. Yeah, you still get some enjoyment.
I don't think they'd be as. Yeah, it's not going to be as compelling as someone who does play the game because of those big jumps. If, as I said, if they had 800 or 1,000 pages, this could be an epic to rival sort of anything these days.
Yeah, the space to flesh it out in the book.
Yes, but in sort of 320 odd pages, it's a good read for your average reader. And I'd recommend even people who aren't into it. Hey, if you just want something nice and light to read and have a bit of intrigue and such, have it. Check it out. But if you're looking for a Lord of the Rings type book, you're not getting it with this.
Okay. And what is the Gift of Guthix? Is that addressed at all, or are we just left?
Well, the Gift of Guthix is the magic coming back, the rune essence.
Yeah,
okay.
Rune essence.
Okay. So the magic coming back. Fair enough. Because obviously we know how integral that is into day-to-day RuneScape gameplay and, dare I say it, Gielinorian life in the 5th and 6th age, right?
Magic is a combat style.
Yeah, exactly. We also want to do a bit of a discussion in terms of how this just ties into RuneScape lore in general with this. And the sense I think that we get in going through this is that there's nothing in here that feels out of place, right?
No,
not at all. This could be a book by the lore council themselves.
Yeah, it's very true to what we have. I would say mostly for RuneScape 3, I think that having read a little bit of maybe like a third or to a half of the second book that they've put out recently, the Fall of Hollowvale, that one is much more, I think, minded towards old school developments.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Whereas I think this one, the Gift of Guthix, is a lot more RuneScape 3 minded, especially with how it calls on like rune memories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It pays some mind to old school. Like I think they referenced the Wrath Altar once or whatnot.
Okay.
But I think that this is a lot more focused towards that RuneScape 3 lore.
Yeah, and see, that's always the thing that comes up when it comes to, what is the difference between old school and RS3 when it comes to lore in the grand scheme of things. If you were to write a RuneScape compendium that covered it all, and what has been said in the past, I don't know if they still consider it this, is that they're just different interpretations of the same events. So events that we're seeing in old school presumably happened somewhere in RS3. It's just we were never, told about them.
Mm-hmm.
And just like old school, they've never got to the point where Guthix got stabbed and the edicts came down and they went to the 6th age. So different sides of the same coin, if you will. And I guess maybe the book is another good way to kind of just bridge that gap into what is becoming a wider RuneScape universe.
I think this book also is. I mean, it's obviously been financed by RuneScape themselves, whereas those earlier.
Oh, has it been?
I believe they contacted the author and sort of commissioned it.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been working on this book, the Fallen book, and their third book with Titan Books, which is also doing with
another huge publisher.
Yeah.
So I think they've sort of commissioned it with in conjunction with using Titan Books and such. So I think that's why you will see this as being more canon than those other books.
I also think that like just nowadays they're a lot more careful about what's a part of the canon and whatnot.
Yes,
they're a lot more IP minded. So I think that there's probably a bit more care here, and probably a little, maybe to the author. I don't know. Maybe to the author's detriment, a little less freedom, but
which is good because I mean, if you're writing a book based on someone else's lore, you need to stick to that lore. You shouldn't be able to. I mean, I dabble in writing myself, and if I were to sort of write this type of stuff, I wouldn't try and take anything and twist it to my way of thinking when it doesn't work for the book. So I do like, and as I said, Erin M. Evans has done a brilliant job. She has stuck true to it. She's let her own ego go and just gone with the lore, which as a writer is hard to do. So, well, yeah,
No,
well done to
I'm
her.
excited for the next. She is writing the third book that's going to be coming out of this.
Oh, she
set.
didn't do the second one.
She didn't do the second one, no, but she is doing the third one.
Well,
So
that's going to
I'm
be an
excited.
interesting thing to compare then if they're in the same same general
That'll be really
wheelhouse
good,
of
actually.
style of book. And now, obviously, like you mentioned, second one looks to index a bit more to old school, but you get to a situation where you realize that, okay, we're Jagex is quite clearly going for a specific style on this here. I actually have her wiki page, the author's wiki page, up right now. She's actually a former editor of something called Wizards of the Coast, which is a game publisher of fantasy and science fiction themes.
Yep.
So
interesting.
Anybody who knows D&D, there you go.
Magic the Gathering
and Magic the Gathering. So
okay, so she does
not
have a
an
lot
insignificant quantity.
Yeah, I think that there's some good authors working in IP related, like commissioning for novels, and I think that we hit a jackpot with the one we got.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay. Any other lore tie-ins? Anything else we should mention before we go?
Such a lore tie-in, but I just did get the Archie pet at 90k.
Congratulations!
Oh my god!
Archaeology.
I feel like we got something going on for Luck and Group Iron Man. Like so many of us have got pets.
Iron Man full stop has better luck than regular accounts, I reckon.
I am ready to see the Zoria corpse at the Runescence mine. Put it in.
Okay, that's a fun thing you can put in.
Oh, wouldn't that be great if they did an update of that and we did have that?
I'm going to say the 110 rune crafting update. I hope to see some tie-ins.
I mean, that's something they could do.
I would love that.
And that would just be a little thing, like how they put Rue in the book. They put this just at the mine. Yeah. So.
Of course.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I believe that pretty much...
Overall, recommended if you play RuneScape.
Yeah, I was going to say, overall,
Agreed.
what do you guys think? I was going to say, this brings us to the end. So what's the verdict here?
Huge recommend
solid 4.5
out
of 5.
Yeah, if you play RuneScape, this is pretty integral to the game you're playing. So if you're interested in the story, this is a huge part of it, and I think that a lot can and probably will be built off of it.
All right, sounds good. One other thing, I guess, with that, we already mentioned. Do you recommend it to somebody who doesn't play? But how integral is it? If you were to say make aspects of this a quest, Jagex would be able to do that, right?
Aspects of it are a quest.
Well, I mean, aside from obviously the retelling of Rune Memories.
If you enjoy fantasy novels, the likes of David Gemmell and all those type of, your Tolkiens and such, then highly recommended. If you're more, I enjoyed Tolkien, but I'm not a big fantasy person, then it's probably not for you. But anyone who does enjoy, good fantasy type novels, I don't think would have an issue. I mean, it wouldn't be on their top 10 list, but I think they'd still enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that the events of the book are probably a level below the World Wakes. Like you come into the game and this is just what happened before. This is
that makes sense.
What made the previous age happen,
which is something we really haven't had an opportunity to explore with quests or any sort of.
Maybe not as exciting, like a god dying, but like it's a lot more like about the people. I
mean, we can have fun without that.
Oh, we can. Oh, for sure. God's not dying. What a joy. But yeah,
especially the one true God.
There's a lot there for like big players in the history and things that I hope that the game touches on more. I hope we see more of like the Rattlin, the Kintra type things. There's some stuff to break into there that I think that other regions get more mind than Asgarnia does.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I'd love to see some sort of focus on Kinshra in the next few years and sort of bringing them up and making them more relevant again, because the intrigue and such behind what was in the book. I mean, they were, Black Knights, whatever. They're just sort of Zamorak followers. You never really thought about them, but this book really,
They built up Asgarnia, so big, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Let us know what you thought about this episode, if we should do one for the next book, if there's anything we should change for these, because, we've never done a book review before, so it's certainly something that we're dabbling with on this. So let us know either in the YouTube comments or in Discord at update.show/Discord for that. And of course, if you want update delivered for each and every episode we do, we're on all the podcast listening services out there: Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more. Just visit update.show/subscribe. And of course, we're on YouTube as well at youtube.com/RSBANB. And with that being said, we'll be back next week for another episode of RSBANB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Happy scraping all.